Hi guys, and welcome to Blackpack Homestead. My name is Morella. My husband Chris and I homestead in western North Carolina on a little less than an acre. Today we're in the kitchen, surrounded by all the egg bounty, and we're going to ferment some tomatoes. My favorite fermented food is tomatoes. My favorite all-time food is tomatoes. I just love tomatoes. And to do this is quite simple. I've been doing it about 3 years now, and I've never had a problem, and I love it. It's the the old-timey way people pickled things before they started having a vinegar. You know, they would take salt water, you know, a really dense salt solution, which this is 1 quart of water. It was full. I've already done one to show you. 1 quart of water with 2.5 tablespoons of salt. Salt that it does not have iodine in, anti-caking agents. Just plain old salt, none of that iodized mess. It can be kosher salt, it can be pink Himalayan salt, it can be any salt as long as it's not got iodine in it. So there you go. That is 1 quart of water to 2.5 tablespoons. And I've already mixed my brine up because I wanted to show you what it's going to look like when we're done. I've got all kinds of tomatoes in there. I've got the little Mr. Stripies. I've got some cherries, some black cherries, all kinds in there. But the first thing you want to do before you start to add your tomatoes is you need to wash your tomatoes, wash all of your jars, and if you're using these little ferment lids, make sure these are all clean, make sure your weights are all clean. With hot soapy water, you got to wash everything you're going to use, because anytime you cut into the fruit or add something new into the brine, there's a chance for contamination. So just to be sure everything is good and clean. So I have my good and clean 1.5 pint jar, and the first thing I like to do is put my herbs in, because that way then the fruit, tomato, whatever you're fermenting, it helps hold all those herbs to the bottom, and that way you don't have them floating up and sticking up out of the water. Because the key to fermenting is that your product, your fruit, is below that line of brine or liquid. So as long as everything's submerged, everything's good underneath the water. If something sticks out of the water, it might get moldy. So try to make sure you put all your herbs in the bottom, and that way your vegetable will hold all of your herbs down. So first herb we are going to start with is dill. And this is dill that we grew here at the Blackpack Homestead. So I think everything that we are putting in this jar, except for the salt and the water, came from here, because that's the dill. Just a touch of dill. You don't want them overwhelmingly dilly. And then some basil. Tomatoes and basil go very well together. So drop those down in the bottom. So there's all of the dill and the basil in the bottom of the jar, and now I'm going to take garlic. From the garlic we grew that you guys saw us harvest, I'm going to take 1 clove of garlic that we grew, holy cow, and I'm going to smash it, just like so. Garlic bits. Smells so good. I do love garlic, but I'm telling you, everything in a ferment, it enhances the flavors. So I stick to the 1 clove rule in my ferments, because otherwise you feel like everything you're eating is garlic. So there's our dill, our basil, our garlic, and now I like to add some caraway seed. You can add anything you want in a ferment. It is totally up to you. There's no right or wrong. This is mustard seed, and I'm just getting just a little palmful. I'm dumping that in there. And then celery seed. Probably a very small little divot of this, because once again it can go a long way. And now that we have all of our herbs in the bottom of our jar, we begin piercing and packing the tomatoes in the jar. So you take your tomato, a chopstick, a skewer, anything you have laying around the house that is cylindrical and pointy. I have chopsticks, so that's what I use. And you just take that little spot right there on the tomato, and I just take it and poke it through and hold it over my jar, so if any juice, because these babies will squirt, comes through, I'm over the jar to catch it. Then I'll pull the chopstick all the way through, and it makes a nice little hole. And you put that in the jar. And then you repeat the process. Now, the first jar I did, this jar, has 3 different kinds of tomatoes in it. This one I kind of want to try to make it all purple cherries. Yeah. You can also ferment large tomatoes whole like this and like make a fermented marinara sauce. Yeah. Alright, I am going to throw a few red ones in here for color. Alright guys, I'll just be piercing, and dropping. And I'm not like squishing them down in there. You want them to be packed in there, as many as you can get in there, but you got to remember, you got to have room for your brine. So there they are so far. Oops, we got garlic paper stuck to the bottom of that one. There it is so far. I'm going to keep poking and poking till it's full, and then we will be back and I'll show you the brine. Okay guys, I've got our little pint and a half jar full, and I should be able to keep all those in there, but we'll find out once we pour the brine. Okay, here's our brine. Remember, it is 2 1/2 tablespoons per quart of water. So I'm just going to pour this. I stirred it up really good to make sure everything was still incorporated into the water. And then, after I pour it in, not all the way full, as you see, I take my chopstick again. It's a handy thing. And you just poke down in here and you see that, get the air bubbles out. So you see how the brine level dropped, and now I've got tomatoes above my water. So I need to add a little bit more. So slosh that around. And add a little bit more. Now I'm going to take a couple of these basil leaves. This is usually I would use a larger leaf. This is what I have currently. A larger leaf basil, but this is what's not bolting. And I lay those on the top to help hold stuff down in the bottom. Because sometimes, like if the garlic comes in pieces, it'll try to float up to the top. And I just stick a couple of leaves on top. And I take my weight. So then we push this down in. And I think we're going to overflow. So let me get over the sink. And we did, just a tiny, tiny bit. As you can see, those basil leaves are helping hold all that stuff down with the glass weight. So then the next step is to use your fermenting lid, or if you have a regular ring like this, you can use that too, just don't put your lid on super tight. So here we go, there's my ferment lid for that jar. I got these on Amazon, and I cannot remember the name, but they're not like the Mason top. I still have tomatoes left over, and I've got 2 jars. So I suppose I should use this little jar I got. So that's what we're going to do. Okay guys, that's going to do it. Let's go over the brine recipe one more time because I had more than I needed. So the brine recipe is 1 quart of water to 2 1/2 tablespoons of salt, non-iodized salt. It can be kosher salt, pink Himalayan salt like I have, but expect your brine to be a little cloudy with pink Himalayan salt because it does have all those minerals in it. Yeah, and some of my favorite fermenting spices are caraway and celery seed and mustard seed and obviously dill and basil and garlic. And the coolest thing, guys, everything in these jars came from our farm except the water and the salt. We grew the tomatoes, the basil. Okay, we didn't grow these spices. A few of these spices we did not grow, but we grew the tomatoes, the basil, and the dill, and the garlic. So that's pretty cool. I like it when I can say, this is food that came from my land. Isn't that wonderful? Another tip about fermenting, remember to set your jars on a dish or a bowl of some sort, because they are going to get bubbly. It's going to ferment, you know, like wine or, you know, any of those fermented drinks, kombucha and all that stuff. So yeah, so this is how I like to ferment my tomatoes, and they'll sit here on the counter for 3 days and I won't touch them. And then on the 3rd day, I'll taste them, and as warm as it is in my house, the ferment may be done then. But normally I'll let tomatoes go for 5 days. But we'll see, because it's warmer in the house, they may ferment faster. So we shall see, and I'll take you along when these are ready to try. Well, I hope you enjoyed my little fermenting video, and I hope you learned something today. I really appreciate you guys joining us on this journey of homesteading. Another way to preserve your tomatoes. They'll be good for 6 months to a year once you stop to ferment and you stick it in the fridge. I've got stuff in there right now that I fermented last summer. So it does last a good minute, but remember the mold rule. If you smell it, do the smell test. Does it have fuzz on it? If it's fuzzy, it's mold. If it's cloudy, that could just be that your ferment is done and it's created a yeast bloom because it is so very fermented. So yeah, but that's all good. So just remember those things. And your ferment should come out fine, just like mine do every time. So thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you guys. We can't do it without you. You bless us with your comments and your presence. So please be sure to come back tomorrow. Today is Vlogust 18th. So be sure you come back tomorrow and see what we got going on here at the homestead on Vlogust the 19th. So yeah, so I'll see you here next time at the Blackpack Homestead. Take care, God bless, and bye-bye.